Hello survivors and welcome to another Walking Dead Road to Survival video, and in this video we're going to be doing a starter guide for S-Class Jesus. I, like yourself no doubt, have got my hands on Jesus. The event has reached its 4th week, which does mean that we can obviously get access to that 4th roadmap and get the last remaining cards that we need for Jesus. Now, Jesus is a great character. I have done a preview of his character. If you want to look at that, I go over his rush, active, leader skill, his weapon potential. I go over what he can, bring to the table when it comes to his abilities. In this, it's about how to build him up to get the best out of him. Now, as always, we'll talk about the skills, and you want to max out both of these. The rush is great. You just want to get this maxed out. Always max out the rush 95% of the time. The active is great. The control in this is just absolutely crazy. I've done a couple of test attacks against Jesus, and it's just, that impair is nuts. Like, there's not much you can do about it if it goes off. And it's an actual lock, because it has a cooldown of 1. It does mean that when it runs out for your attack team, it's going to happen again unless Jesus is controlled that turn. If he gets controlled in between and the control wears off, he'll still be able to do his active the second he comes back. So yeah, it is brutal. And what makes it worse is, it isn't just that they can't rush, they can't gain AP. So even if you manage to control him for that one turn, you would just be gaining AP rather than actually rushing that first time. So very, very powerful active. Definitely get that maxed out as soon as possible. Now, when it comes to the combat mods, you've got to make the decision of where you're going to put each stat. His HP and defense are exactly the same. So you want to put one heavy into mods and one heavy into the weapon. That does mean like HP on the mods and defense percentage on the weapon, or vice versa. I'm personally going to go for heavy HP on the mods because I know I don't use HP mods as much a lot of the time. A lot of characters seem to need more defense than they need HP, so I'm gonna have like the cream of the crop mods for Jesus. But if you've got your better mods available to you that you want to use on Jesus, like you've got a really good defense versus tough, for instance, and you're going to be able to use this on Jesus, and it's on a defense set, you might want to just use a defense set. That's up to you. But if you do that, just make sure you switch the weapon to being a HP weapon. I'm going to be using defense percentage on the weapon in my weapon preview. So the first two mods are pretty straightforward. HP on HP to get that heavy amount of HP. As you can see, it has gone up by 500 just because of the HP mod. We're not getting the set bonus just yet. And then we're going to get the defense versus tough. This is definitely going to be required. He is going to be attacked by tough characters. He is going to want to reduce that damage as much as possible. Now, when it comes to the bottom right-hand corner, the resist, I would say you have 3 important resists. This is the downside. You actually kind of need 3 resists in my opinion. You need to have daze resist because his active is crazy. If that control starts going off, I would say that's probably the most important one. Just make sure he's dazing. The next one you need is Taunt Resist to stop Princess from controlling him and to stop any first turn control. A lot of first turn control is Taunt, but this is where the problems come in. He has a lot of AP gain. He has AP gain on his active, he also has AP gain on his rush, and if he is one of the last characters alive, he will be the one that is gaining this. If he's just by himself, he'll give himself 100% AP every turn. It actually can be pretty bad. There probably could become a situation, if you're not got any stun resist mods, where he's just chain rushing and you have to flee. Like, there's just not going to be anything happening. He's just going to be constantly rushing, and that's going to be it. So there is potential there for sure. I'll actually probably make a clip of that because I don't think that situation should really occur in RTS, but we'll maybe look at that a little later in the video. To combat that, you're going to need one of 2 mods. Exhaust resist or main resist. Personally, on a defense team, I think it's better to go with main resist because it will also stop other damage sources, like Lily, for instance. It'll stop her damage rush. Whereas exhaust only stops the actual debuff itself. That means you would take main damage. Whereas if you actually just stopped main damage, you're going to stop it from a lot more sources. And I think the most important one out of all of the resist is definitely going to be daze resist, and that's why we're going to use it. It's so important that I would definitely do it even if you don't have it as part of your set, so you don't get any set bonus and it's like part of crit set. It's still worth getting it, even if it goes down to like 45%, 40%, because the impact of Jesus is heavily reliant on his active being just so destructive, so massively controlling. And there are characters that have those first turn actives or weapons, like Priya's weapon, Michonne's active, and these sort of characters are coming more and more accessible. And there's no doubt some more characters like this on the way, and it's going to be a problem. We also, I think, have Beta, who has a chance to hit Daze on attack with his basic attack. So yeah, there's going to be more characters coming out with that. So definitely protect that active. It is one of the most important things about Jesus's kit. The bottom left-hand corner mod, the auxiliary mod, it is very worth noting that he will not do basic attacks that often. He's going to be doing his rushing, and he's going to be doing his active as a primary thing that he's going to do. The basic attack is when neither of those are up, which is not going to be too often because he's got a really low cooldown on the active, and his rush is very powerful. So powerful that he can give the AP to himself if he's one of the last characters alive. So he could potentially just be rushing. So, in my opinion, this bottom left-hand corner is good to use a defense while stunned, or I think it's defense while confused, or a graze mod. Something that's going to be impactful based on your opponent's move, not based on what Jesus does. It's more based on what your opponent does to Jesus. So what we are going to go with is graze, just to reduce the damage that Jesus is going to take when he gets hit. He has a chance to reduce incoming basic attack damage and each individual hit of multi-hit rushes. That includes Priya and any other characters like her. Now, in the last slot, which is, of course, the wildcard slot, we're going to double down on those resists. It should be pretty obvious when we were talking about the resists. We talked about that in depth because there are some options here. And I'd say the second most important resist is without a doubt Taunt, just because it's on Princess. But also, it's much more available in terms of first turn control. And someone could potentially try and attack you with a Doc Stevens, let's say. And Doc Stevens can impair and taunt Jesus. But if he impairs him, it doesn't actually matter too much. He'll still do the active, he just won't gain the AP, but the active will go off with the trauma and the impair. That's very important. However, if in the future there are some first turn attack team actives that come out and those characters are there to come up against Jesus teams, as much as this is a starter guide, do adjust these mods if the meta changes on that first turn. If those characters come out with a first turn confuse or a first turn stun, you might want to adjust that taunt mod to being whatever that effectively accessible character is. It would generally have to be a free to play character with the first turn control. So just be aware of switching it up based on other characters that come into the game in the future. But as for now, we're going to stick as is. I'm pretty happy with these mods. He goes up to 5.9k HP. This is without receiving a leader bonus, so that is going to rise a bit more. He's not going to get any more HP off of his weapon, however, because we are going to go with AP on attack and defense percentage. So his base weapon, as we know, is a default pistol. So you can put whatever pistol you want in his hands. You can have one already pre-made. We have been given 2 pistols that will work quite well with Jesus. One was part of a free-to-play heavy grind event, and one is part of the current season's battle pass. So this was the pistol that we got from that event. The downside of this pistol is it starts off with HP percentage, and we kind of want defense percentage here. So if you were going to use this weapon, like I said before, if you've got HP percentage on the weapon, you put defense on his mod. So you just switch the set up to defense, you switch the mod up to defense on defense. That's how you've got to keep the balance. However, I would say AP on attack is a much better way to go. So you would want to switch it to AP on attack in the second slot and then go for 45% HP. The other 2 upgrades are really good. Stun on defense is great. That does mean that if anyone obviously tries to focus him, they have the potential to get stunned, but he also has the potential to get focused. That's going to be quite important. And then the alert buffs is obviously good for everyone else, but not Jesus unless you've got a second one of these weapons in your team. The other easy baseline weapon is the Blocking Silence Maxim 9 from the current Battle Pass, and strangely enough it is actually Jesus' weapon. So you could potentially try and just use the weapon he should have in his hands. If you did use this weapon with the mods I've already shown, you would want to remove the HP percentage, go for huge AP on attack, and then increase defense up to 45%. absolute defense is awesome. That does obviously mean that he could receive 0 damage. It is a great chance as well, so it is better than the one that fast characters can craft in the armory. And the last buff is exactly the same as the previous weapon, so if you use this weapon and that weapon in the same team, everyone on the team will get the defense buff, regardless of whether they're holding this weapon or not. Generally, you only would have 1, but sometimes having 2 can be decent. Having more than 2 is completely redundant. So you'd want to upgrade it to something like this. We did actually manage to get a perfect weapon, but because this only needs basic upgrades, you can keep resetting it to get a perfect weapon. I would say that's a good idea to do. If you've got a 3rd or 4th slot that you like on a 5-star weapon, why not get the best out of it otherwise? The same can be said if you've got a 4-star weapon. Keep resetting that weapon until you get it perfect before upgrading it to a 5-star weapon. You also get the big benefit of getting the weapon go to a power score of 630, so it goes like it shows, a little bit shiny. It goes to masterwork, looks very nice, and this is going to be perfect for my Jesus' hands because he definitely needs the extra defense, and 45% is going to be great. So now we have him with his weapon and his mods in his hands. You can see his HP is a little bit lower by 1,000, and it is going to get a little bit lower again when we do obviously have Jesus as the leader. However, once we do, we can get his defense up to nearly 10,000. This is a lot of defense. It's going to be very, very useful for Jesus. It's going to take massively reduced damage once he actually gets hit. If you have got that absolute defense weapon in his hands, he can tank damage and just take nothing anyway. This is actually pretty nice. It could be further reduced because of the combat mods he's got. We've got Graze on him and obviously defense against tough. So as we attack Jesus as a defense leader, he has got some very powerful characters around him, and this is where Jesus is going to shine. You're suddenly going to have to think about the power that those characters bring and whether you should focus on them over Jesus. And this is going to allow Jesus to get active off real quick. We are going to try and control him first turn, however, and we have got Michonne and Priya who have both got days, so we're going to try and do the active of Michonne first. We're going to miss out. We're not going to hit it. We have got a second try, and we're going to again get another resist. I could have potentially brought Beta for a 3rd try, but look how much like first turn control I'm trying to use on Jesus. And we're going to see why. I got a last chance with a potential stun. Doesn't happen. I did steal the buff because this character does have Ransack, which is actually quite a nice little effect. The Rampage in the hands of Marcus did not work because of the camouflage. And now Jesus is going to do his active. This does mean my entire team is confused, and it does have 2,000 trauma as well. This is the power that Jesus brings to the table, and you want to protect this as much as possible. Once he gets the active off just once, it's going to massively slow down an attack team. If camouflage wasn't slowing them down enough, this is going to do an added amount on top. Now, I did sort of touch on the fact that his rush can get a little bit nuts. He can stun, I believe, 2 characters, as it says. Up to 2 enemies get minus 50% attack, daze, stun, and confuse for 2 turns. While battling on the defense team, up to 2 teammates gain 100% AP. Now, I did say if he is the only one alive, he will be giving the 100% AP to himself, as long as he's the one of the last 2 alive. And those 2 characters that are alive, they're going to be getting chain stunned every single turn. If it's only 2 characters alive and there is no stun resist, it would just go on forever. Okay, so we are on turn 3. This is the natural rush turn for Jesus. And what you're going to see is just a non-stop chain. I'm just going to do my double attacks. Here comes the rush. My characters are stunned because they've got no resist. It goes back to Jesus. My characters are stunned because they've got no stun resist. It goes back to Jesus. And there's legitimately no way I can break out of this. It's actually impossible to break out of this. So going up against Jesus teams, it's definitely important to have somebody that can stop this from happening. Akira on an attack team will be really important, obviously, because he can cleanse, and then he could maybe do his active to revive anyone who got taken out, or, you know, so on and so forth, or obviously using stun resist themselves. So, yeah, I'm going to have to flee because there's nothing literally that's going to happen except what you're seeing for the last 20 seconds. Personally, I don't like the fact that you can get into that situation in the game, but you've got to be aware of the potential here. This video isn't just for you trying to work out how to build your own Jesus. You're going to be facing this quite a lot, because he's going to become the new free-to-play meta lead. He's going to be absolutely everywhere. Got to be aware of his weaknesses, of people who haven't modded him out correctly, and take advantage. And obviously, as your own Jesus, protect those weaknesses. That's the name of the game, baby. So we'll take one last look at his stats. As you can see, nearly 8,000 HP, nearly 10,000 defense. He has graze to reduce the amount of damage he's going to take. In an auxiliary slot, he's obviously got defense against tough, because he's going to be very susceptible to heavy hitting tough characters. Doubling down on the resist seems the way to go. And obviously, heavy one stat on the mods, heavy another stat on the weapon, on the two defensive stats, HP and defense. It's just down to whichever one you want to stack the most. Now, if you've got any extra thoughts about how you can gear out Jesus as an S-class character, do let me know in the comments down below. But that is the end of my video. I want to thank you very much for tuning in. And as always, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.